In this video, I'm going to talk about the four main bottlenecks that are sucking your time and sucking your profit. And just for context, these usually happen in companies that are growing up. They're usually between 1 million and 5 million in revenue. And each one of the things that I'm going to share with you in this video really adds a lot of hours onto the founder's time every single week, which absolutely sucks because part of the reason that you got into business in the first place was so you could have freedom. But most weeks you spend more hours and have more stress and more headaches with less freedom than you had when you were working for somebody else. And these four bottlenecks really speak to why that's happening. So what we're looking to do here is we're looking to solve the symptom of the problem of spending so much time working. And the good news is that as you start removing the bottleneck in each one of these things that I'll share with you in this video, you're going to find that you start getting a lot of time back. And that's going to start out kind of slow. You're going to see maybe 2 or 3 hours a week. And then the whole thing is just going to landslide where you're seeing 10 to 15, even 20 hours a week. By the way, my name is Brent, and I run a commercial real estate services company that does just under $2 million a year at 34% EBITDA. Whole thing takes me about 90 minutes a week to run. I didn't have to give up profit or control to be able to step back like that and do some other things that I'm really interested in doing. Creating videos like this is one of those. Helping founders like you save time every single week with an operating system is the other thing I do. But the purpose of this video here is to walk through these four bottlenecks that are happening that ultimately keep you working so much. And they do ultimately suck down the profit that you could be making, which is another reason you got into business, not just the time freedom. So let's take a look at the first one of these, which is that delegation is really invisible. So a bottleneck that a lot of founders will go to as they're growing up into their business, it's getting a little bit more mature, is that the work always seems to have this boomerang effect where they'll think that they delegate it. They'll ask somebody to do the work for them that they hire. And then the work ends up coming back where they're either doing it or they're having to really manage the person that's doing it because they come up with way too many questions than you would have expected them to come up with. And that's because the delegation is invisible. The standard way that I did this that was really wrong and I totally screwed it up was it was management by abdication. So instead of actually delegating a task with the process that I'll walk you through here in a second, my go-to was go make them happy. That was what I thought delegation was, or the best I could do at the time because I was running so fast, trying to keep everything else going, like spinning a whole bunch of plates. And no wonder the work always came back to me because go make them happy, or whatever iteration it is of that, really it was ambiguous and it wasn't clear and it wasn't really good leadership, but it was the best I had at the time because I didn't understand the framework that I'll walk you through right now when it comes to how to actually delegate something like a boss. You are the boss, delegate like a boss. So if you want to get something off of your plate and absolutely keep it off, you're going to have to do it one more time. Whatever task it was that you were doing that you hired behind or you want one of your existing employees to do, you still need to do it one more time and you need to do it exceptionally well with a little bit of a twist. You've got to demonstrate what you're doing. And demonstrate it in this micro detail, way more detail than you think that you would. The way that I look at this is like people that are coding, garbage in, garbage out. One of the things that we do when we write code is we're very, very specific about what we want something to do. Or if we're writing a prompt in AI, the output that you get from AI has everything to do with the input that you give it in the prompt. The more specific you are, the more granular in detail, the better result you're going to get. And so as you're doing this task this one final time and you're demonstrating it, you're going to demonstrate it in micro detail and explain it in way deeper detail than you think you need to. One of the best ways that I've found to do this is just to record a Loom video, and Loom's a free software you can download that'll record your screen and it will record your audio and your video if you want it to. but talk people through what you're doing to the point where if they couldn't see the video, they would still be able to understand what you're saying. So I'm going to move my mouse cursor over to this spot and I'm going to click open. Like that level of detail that you think somebody doesn't need is ironically the one level of detail that you need to make sure that they don't come back to you. So it turns out they actually did need it. So you do it, you document it, then you're going to demonstrate it. And demonstrating it is simple as getting with the person that you're going to have do the task and then doing it live again. You've already documented it. That's the resource that they can go back and look at later. But you have to do it in front of them, which is demonstrating it, and then do it that way in the micro detail again, which I know this sucks. You're doing it twice. Yes, you are doing it twice, but they're not going to come back to you again and again and again and again. This is the idea. We get this off of our plate. A little bit of effort on the front end is going to save you tons of effort and time on the back end. That's why one of these things is the bottleneck, is this delegation is completely invisible inside of your organization. So when you demonstrate it, you're going to go through with the person. And if you ask them, do you understand what I'm saying? And they do this and they nod their head, yes, this means I have no idea what you just said. Instead, ask them, what did I just tell you? Do the task in front of me. Watch them do it. And as you watch them do it, you're going to see where there are any gaps in this whole thing. Even then, it's not delegated yet because you've got to be able to understand who the owner is, what the definition of success of the task is, and when your next check-in appointment is going to be to make sure that the task is delegated and done the way that you want it to be done. If you want a way to change your invisible delegation into visible, tangible, tactical delegation, the easiest way to do that is with a free tool that I built. It's actually something that you get with the 48-hour founder time reset. I'll drop a link to that below in this video, but it helps you get 3 hours back in a week, one by auditing your time, but also helping you understand really how to delegate and giving you a tool that allows you to very clearly get stuff off of your plate. So click the link in the description if you're interested in getting the delegation triage board that I built for free. Second thing, when it comes to a bottleneck that sucks your time and sucks your profit, is that acquiring talent is an afterthought for most founders. I know it was for me. Every time I would think, oh, I need a new employee for some task that I have, like that's the time I started thinking about it versus looking at this and going like, all right, so if I really want to acquire good talent, how am I going to do this? And like the big conviction for me was I'd spend 40 hours a week looking how to sell more clients, but I'd spend 0 hours a week looking how to recruit more talent. So no wonder I couldn't find people that I needed to. But the good news is that a lot of the skills, and like one of the first skills that you develop as a founder is how to sell. I've yet to meet a founder that doesn't at least have some sales skill. There's always the ability to ramp that up a little bit, but everybody's got some degree of sales. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a founder in the first place. And so the skills that you have in sales are very, very similar to what it is that's I've found successful in recruiting new people to come and work for us, or better people to come and work for us at my commercial real estate services company. So when we look at the different steps of getting new customers, they mirror the steps of getting new employees. So we have lead gen on the customer side. So we're trying to find new people that might be interested and need to know about whatever product, service, or experience that we provide as the founder. Like that's lead generation. And we'll do that in a number of different ways. We'll write marketing messages, or we'll send out targeted advertising, or we'll come up with a referral strategy, like whatever that is. Take those principles that you would use of generating new leads for your business and instead use those principles to attract new talent for your business. So I'm not past running targeted ads on social media platforms to find new employees, or running marketing messages, like really selling it. It's not the job that we have for an association manager. The job that we have is more descriptive of what we want it to be. So you've got to think about like a headline, like what is it that really sells this thing? So lead gen turns into talent generation. The next thing is we've got to amp up their interest in the product. So If we've got lead gen, that's kind of like our hook, the thing that brings them in the door. But what keeps them there? There's got to be some meat on this thing. So ask yourself, how are you getting your talent to become more interested in the job opportunity that you have available for them that you posted and they got hooked by? We've got to make sure that their interest is at the height, which very similarly to getting new customers versus getting new employees, we've got to understand the employee that we want and really what their needs and desires are. And once we understand those things, that's where we can start communicating with them on a different level to help them understand the interest of getting into the business that we have. Then tactically, when getting new customers, we obviously have to sell. But in this, that really turns into the interview. Interview questions, it's always like, tell me about yourself and what have you done in your past jobs. But really, those are the questions that are like surface level questions that people can really easily fool you on. And then you end up hiring somebody and then like the day they show up, it's a totally different person that shows up. Ask me how I know. Totally been there. But when we think about this, it's asking the right questions that get the candidate to open up and help us understand what it is. And open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions are usually good, but also have them demonstrate the task that you need them to do. If you're looking for somebody to build a website, pay them to build one page. Or if you're looking for somebody to edit a video, pay them to edit a video. Interview a ton of people, get it down to your top 2 or 3, then pay those people to do a micro portion of the overall task and then judge them based on that and hire based on your judgment of that whole thing. In this though, when we're closing candidates, after we interview them, look at it like closing questions. When we close sales, it's because we're making a direct ask. We're never passive and saying like, okay, well, let me know, think about it and walk away. Like in this, we're asking like, what do you need to have? What needs to be true for you in order for you to accept this job right here, right now? And ask that question. And then the hardest part of any sale is shutting up after you ask the question that closes it, but just be quiet. Be quiet for as long as you need to and see what happens. They're totally going to come and tell you exactly what that is. And then the last part of this, when we acquire talent and put it at the forefront versus an afterthought, is we need to really look at what our onboarding process is. Does it deliver on the job promise we have? Again, most of the time when I screwed this up, it was management by abdication. Just going like, all right, cool, I hired you. The worst thing I ever said was that I hire adults and I trust them to be adults. Yes, they are adults and you should trust them to be adults and you should respect them to be adults, but that doesn't mean they don't need to be led and don't need to be directed on what to do. So talent acquisition needs to be at the forefront, just like customer acquisition, if you don't want your business to completely suck your time and suck your profit. So that's 2 out of the 4 things we're going to talk about today. The third thing is something that you probably started out with and read a leadership book on and then really didn't do a whole lot with. I know I didn't do a whole lot with this when I first started my company a couple decades ago. And that's culture spoken, but not reinforced. And this is tough because like when you start out, I knew that for me, I was like, company mission, like what do we need one of those for? It always seemed like this corporate idea that never really went anywhere. And I realize now that corporate didn't go anywhere with their mission because I've found that the bigger an organization gets, the more likely it is to be mediocre. And that's not because the top talent is mediocre, but it's because the middle layers of management tend to get more mediocre. And then in the mediocrity there, they tend to hire more mediocre people that work at the lower levels. So the bigger the company, the more mediocre the talent gets and the more mediocre the culture gets. So at 1 million to 5 million, which is where these 4 bottlenecks happen, you still have great influence over the culture as the founder. And so let's talk about the 4 things that really make up the culture. And believe me, having this culture down, like you may think that there's all sorts of stuff that takes up your time. This is the number one thing that is sucking your time right now. And it's crazy because it's invisible. And when it's invisible, you have no idea it's actually happening. So lock in the culture and just observe after you lock in the culture, how much less time your job takes you and how many less little fires you have to put out. So let's talk about the 4 things that make up culture. So the first thing It's your purpose and your mission, which the easiest way to explain that is, why do you exist beyond making money? Your purpose is not to make money. Making money is an awesome byproduct of your purpose. If you have a bigger mission, bigger purpose, that typically leads to more money, but we still have to have one that is beyond the purpose of making money. So for example, my mission and my purpose at Time Leverage Lab is to free 5,000 founders from the confines of working 60-hour weeks. I want people to work like 30-hour weeks. That's the mission. That's why I exist, and that's why the company exists. The second thing that builds culture is the values. So what are 3 to 5 principles that you actually operate by? And I use emphasis on that because actually operate by is different than claim to operate by. A lot of times we'll put out the values, these are our values, but then we don't really follow through on them. So spend some time thinking about, what are the 3 to 5 things that you actually can get behind? These are things that you will actually do. That's a good place to start with company values. If you struggle with doing that, just pick the opposite of what it is that you want the value to be, and then that ends up being your value. So for example, is that we are totally soft and we don't really want to get better, versus what is competitiveness in our culture, right? So you look at the opposite and then you just do the opposite of that. And that's the way that goes. Third thing that brings in culture is rituals and systems. So what's the cadence? How often are you meeting with people? Where is the recognition process for them? And then what are the feedback loops that everybody has to see that they're aligned with the culture? Fourth and final thing is, what are the observable behaviors? What are things that you can catch people doing every single day that are going to reinforce your mission, your values, and ultimately your rituals and your systems? Most of the time, when I got this wrong, was I would look at this more from number 4 backwards to number 1. So I'd look at the observable behaviors and say, these are the things that I want to be able to observe. Then I'd look at rituals and systems. Then I'd look at values. Then I'd look at purpose and mission. And I'd wonder why nothing ever changed. Look at it like mission and purpose is the foundation, and then values build up from there. And that's like the framework of everything. The rituals are what we fill it up in. And then observable behaviors are like what people are doing inside the structure that we built. So that's the fourth thing. The fifth thing, and this was like the biggest and the most massive shift for me, was when I realized that it was a bottleneck for me to solve symptoms instead of problems. So a lot of times we have a tough time seeing what the actual problem is, which totally makes sense, because when you're in it every day, the problem's too close to your face and you can't really see where it is. And so you look at the symptom and you're moving so fast that you go, okay, the symptom, that's the problem. That's what I'm going to fix. And then, at least my experience is, you found a ton of symptoms, fix the symptoms, but then the problem is still apparent. So in order to separate the symptom from the problem, the first thing is just to check your assumptions. So you can assume you think you know something. And the way to check your assumptions is by asking a couple of deeper questions than you have. So let me use kind of a real world example of what this might look like. If I asked you what your biggest problem was in your business, you'd probably be able to write that out pretty quickly, at least based on your perception. And let's say for purposes of this example, it was not enough sales. You might think that that's the actual problem, but if you ask yourself a couple more questions, then you might find that it's actually just a symptom of a problem. So I might ask some different questions, like, how do we know that we've got product market fit? What's the evidence that the marketplace actually wants what we have? That may be a problem that leads to the symptom of not enough sales. Or it could be that our marketing message is targeted towards the wrong person in their state of awareness. There's a way that we communicate with prospects based on what they know about it. There's like problem aware, which means, hey, I realize I have a problem, but I have no idea what the solution is, all the way into completely solution aware. That's the person that continues to buy from you over and over and over again, but we may be communicating with them in the wrong way. It might be their sales script, and that sucks. That may be the root problem that leads to not enough sales. Or it could be that our pricing model sucks. If our pricing model isn't what our pricing model needs to be, then that could very well be the actual problem that's contributing to the symptom of not enough sales. So with this, really the lesson in that I think will help you the most, because it helped me the most, was taking what you think is the problem and just asking yourself, is this a symptom of a bigger problem? If something else changed, would this change? And once you get down and drill down a little bit with just a couple of questions, you can really find the actual problem. And you'll find that once you start solving actual problems instead of symptoms, then that's going to help move you further, faster, and it's going to take you less time to do, because we really want to get out of working 60-hour weeks. You want the time freedom that you signed up for, or at least that you thought you were signing up for when you became a founder in the first place. So let's review these couple of things. First, delegation was invisible. That's a massive bottleneck. I taught you what you need to do on delegation. Then acquiring talent is an afterthought. We really need to look at our sales process and acquire talent the exact same way. And then culture spoken but not enforced. This is stuff that seems like it's not going to affect your hours, but I promise you it will. And then the last thing was solving symptoms instead of problems. And we want to solve more problems than we want to solve symptoms. So if you heard all these things and you're like, that sounds awesome, what do I do next, right? We can plug all these holes, but you might need some more time in order to put these things in place that I talked about here. If you want to get 3 hours back this week, what you can do is you can grab my 48-hour Founder Time Reset. This is a toolkit. It comes with systems that are already in place, plug and play. You don't have to learn anything. You're going to be able to know where your time is going, spot the low leverage hours, and then we work on cutting or removing those hours from your calendar this week. It comes with a delegation triage board and a calendar cleanse standard operating procedure. If you want to grab that, hit the link in the description below this video and you can get started anytime. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.